Good morning, everybody, and welcome along to the Saturday show. I'm your host for today, Blair Malloy, and I'm joined today, as usual, by my co-host, Joshua Barry. Josh, how are you this fine Saturday morning?
I don't know what you're going to say there before you introduce me. Fine, yep. Got a couple of Rangers wins to talk about, which is new and
a novel exercise discussing Rangers victories, which long may continue. That's good.
Yeah, that's all my news. What about you?
Good. Like you said, it's been a more positive week in general. 2 wins, badly needed wins for Derek McInnes, I think, at this stage. Some moments better than others, still lots to work on, some things are improving, but we'll get into all of that, Josh. We'll get into all of that over the course of the morning. Thanks to all of you for joining us on this Saturday morning. We aim to bring you the best tactical breakdown of all things Rangers from myself and Joshua, and this show wouldn't be possible without our sponsors, Lime Energy, fresh thinking energy. Big thanks to Lime for sponsoring the show all year and keeping the lights on so we can continue to do this show, literally keeping the lights on. So we'll get into it, Joshua. We're recording this the morning after Rangers 1-0 win over Jablonec in the Conference League qualifier. It wasn't pretty at times. I think the first half especially is one that can be consigned to the annals of history and not really repeated, hopefully. We're basically going to try and delve into the reason why so much of the time last night, as we're recording now, it did look a bit too slow, it did look a bit too pedestrian, and as we all know, when those balls are going sideways and backwards, it creates a bit of a hostile atmosphere at Ibrox sometimes.
Yeah, obviously, Rangers won 2 games. They've had a clean sheet. Thought there were some excellent performances. We spoke about it on the morning briefing, but McCann just looks good, doesn't he?
Yes, he does.
Dragicevic, not overly busy on the ball, but I think he looks bright. Pandur got his clean sheet last night. I think he's been proactive, seemed to have settled on a shape. So, it's not a show that's designed to say there's more and more things wrong. But when you say there, you hope that first half hasn't been repeated. This is the first half that we've seen for a long time. And there is reasons behind that viewers of the Saturday show will know we discuss a lot. So I guess the point of today's podcast is, why is that? How do Rangers play fast when an opponent wants to play slow? How do they create space to attack into before they think about going forward? And I'm going to read a quote which we'll put on the screen from Derek McInnes last night, which I thought put this very he put it very succinctly and kind of made the point for us. He was asked about the tempo, and he said, I thought when we did press properly, we forced them into some mistakes, but it's more about the tempo. That's more about tempo out of possession. Tempo in possession, I think, is the easier part to press, to be honest. I want us to be a team that nobody really likes to play against. There's 2 sides to that. We want to be a team that nobody likes to play against because of how organised and how ferocious we are in the press. But I think in the end, we're getting a lot of that right. But we've also got to be difficult to play against by showing the tempo on the ball, the desire to play here, the confidence. A lot of that comes from being confident of our work. It can look a bit too laboured at times, and that's as a team. That's not just individuals. And that comment there, Blair, and he went on to say that it's easier to coach a team out of to be aggressive out of possession than it is in possession. And that, for me, summarises Rangers' last 5-6 years, explains the ill-fated Russell Martin appointment, but which had the right diagnosis, which is so many of these games, Rangers have 60-65% of the ball. The opponent sits in and asks, can you break us down? For so many years, Rangers haven't been able to do that, but they haven't been able to make these games fast. And I thought that was what we saw in the first half last night. Changed a bit after the break. We'll come on to the reasons why. But that kind of quote from McInnes, I think, summarises a lot of Rangers' issues over the last number of years. They've been an organised team without the ball. I wrote about it on the website on Friday morning. They've been hard to beat, but for a long time they've been more comfortable in games where they've had less of the ball than more of the ball. And that is an obvious clash because 60-70% of games they're going to have the majority of possession.
Yeah, it's a key phrase you use there is Rangers making slow games fast. And I think that's what that will resonate with a lot of people who go to Ibrox regularly.
Yeah.
Because a common trope of Rangers games over the past 5 years is you see a centre half get on the ball, he looks up, he looks for the pass, there's maybe not one on, so he hangs on to it for 5-6 seconds, and usually what follows is disgruntlement from the crowd
Yeah.
because they want to see the ball going forward, move pace, they want to see it move with deliberacy, and sometimes that doesn't happen. So I guess the question is why? Why is there what seems like on the outset a hesitancy to move the ball quicker when Rangers are building up?
So we'll maybe get into some. Will we get into examples straight away? Yeah, I think we will get into examples straight away because it's easier to depict.
Okay.
So I would say, like, generally speaking, McInnes, and we spoke about this at the start of summer, his football, I don't think, it's high and wide, it's man for man. It's looked better in this 4-3-3 because you've got more cover in the middle of the pitch. But if you boil it down to, I think, what he wants his team to look like, off the ball kind of isn't a conversation. We had that conversation last week, and that has started to look a bit more secure. But on the ball, I'd say, wants to get the ball forward early. He wants to play with two strikers when he can. He's obviously had to retreat from that a little bit and adapt in the last couple of games. He wants to utilise wingers. We'll maybe speak about that a bit at the end of the show because I think they're so important, not only for the fun bits, the creating and the scoring, but actually the middle of the park, getting Rangers forward, injecting pace into games. And he wants to play forward a bit directly. And I remember speaking to Joel Sked, who covers Hearts, and he said in a podcast we did that Hearts, the season before McInnes came in, the top 5 passers were all centre-backs, or all defenders, in the defence midfielder, and the season after that dramatically changed. Now, the upside of that is sometimes you get the ball forward more quickly. The downside is you can lose a bit of control. I think, as we'll look at in this example, when you're trying to break a team down, often what you'll see high possession teams do is lots of rotations. So that's a fullback moving inside, it's a central midfielder dropping into a fullback slot, it's a winger moving inside. And we saw little elements of that on the right-hand side, but McInnes doesn't really wants his fullback in fullback positions because when the ball turns over, you want to be a team that's structured. But I think the downside of that sometimes is then you're not... The opposition knows where their man is and they're not going to move that much and the rotations aren't there, which is why then I think you need the individualism of wingers and you need a bit more bravery to play through the middle, as we'll look at, to actually create the space. That's the key thing, I think, to remember with this. It's not just about can you go forward quickly, because if there's nowhere to go forward, if there's no free man, you're just going to lose the ball and you've got a road an opponent, don't you? You've got to break them down. You've got to create space first so then a winger can attack forward, a midfielder can pass forward, someone can play forward in the first instance.
So we're about to come on to these actual examples from the Jablonec game the other night. But in layman's terms, what you're essentially saying is, and as a prime example of this was Motherwell coming to Ibrox last season, rotations are essentially players always on the move, always constantly giving each other different shapes to pass into and creating space by dragging players out of position and moving the opposition all over the place. What Rangers under Derek McInnes are, if I've understood you, are a bit more static.
Structured, I'd say.
A bit more structured. And they want to retain that because the benefit of that is when they lose the ball, they have a shape.
I'd say so, yeah. Okay. And again, obviously, I think every manager, what they do on the ball impacts what they do off the ball. So if you look at Danny Rowe's team, for example, there's loads and loads of rotations, but equally Rangers were cut through the centre of the pitch so often because it was only one central midfielder. And if even you think of the Hearts game, an example we've used a lot before, when they win 4-2, and actually before Rangers score their first goal that day, Hearts should, under Derek McInnes at the time, should probably go up the pitch and score a second goal because of how open Rangers are. So yeah, McInnes wants his team to be structured, and I think that does lead to fewer rotations, which then means how are you going to get forward? You've got to move the ball quicker, which is a tempo thing and it is a confidence thing. But you've also got to have the individuals out wide to get you forward, to win individual battles. And as we'll look at, you still need players to, I guess, be brave and play through the centre as well. So if I take this first example, I think this is quite a good example of how Rangers set up in the first half. And this culminates in Jeji Gassama getting the ball and kind of spraying it over to the right-hand side. So if you look here, Manny Fernandez is on the ball. I thought Manny Fernandez had a fine game on Thursday.
Yes.
Something he does a lot. He takes... he's not had a good start to the season, so I'm not saying he has.
You're using the word fine there as in okay, not fine as in incredible.
But as we'll see in a couple of these examples, the reason he's often staying on the ball is he has nowhere to go, so he has to wait for a man to commit. And there's an example coming up where he wraps a brilliant pass through the middle of the park. He commits men. He takes ownership. Yes, his defending has been poor in the opening games of the season, but I think you've also got to give him give him a bit of credit when he does the right thing. So if you see here,
This first one here, that's Manny Fernandez on the ball.
Manny Fernandez on the ball. You've got McCann just behind them. You've got Dan Neil in behind. Now, Rangers hardly found Dan Neil in these number 6 spots in the first half, and it seemed to change and did that more in the second half.
Now, that sorry to interject there, but that is the position that I want Dan Neil to be in. I want him to be close to the centre halves and be shown for that pass.
Yeah. But the difficulty is he's all on his own, right? So if he loses the ball there, now often what you'll see, so I think, and a lot of this is, we're trying to hypothesize a bit and join dots, but I think if you're a team who really wants to spend a lot of time controlling, moving up gradually, you have another midfielder probably into next to Dan Neil who's staggered slightly higher. That gives you an extra passing option, but gives you the cover if you lose the ball. But we'll come on to that because the Rangers did find them more in the second half. But in this occasion, the ball goes wide to James Penrice. And again, if I go down to the third slide here, Blair, it's timestamped 6:53. When James Penrice is here, opposition teams often will want to shunt you to either side because the byline there's an extra defender. So you've got 50% less angles than if you're playing in the middle of the pitch.
I like that. The byline's an extra defender.
Yeah, I've stolen that. It's not mine. Now, the benefit of that is if you're Rangers, if you lose it, you're not losing it in the middle of the pitch. But the negative is if you've got those players high and wide, then the centre of the pitch might risk being a bit open. But this time the ball's moved quick enough from the centre to the fullback that if Gassama, as we play the tape on, gets enough separation, you can see him in this clip, 6:53, you can see he's just away from his marker. So he can receive the ball, facing the game, and he gets forward. And now Rangers have built the play because they went to one of the touchlines, they've got enough bodies high up the pitch, and they actually create quite a dangerous opportunity from this. But that was quite rare in the first half. So too often they're then just guilty of going around and around and around. And because Jablonec,
I think.
I've heard you've been caught up in the Czech Republic Czechia debate.
Yes, we're not going back into that.
Yeah. I'll just say Jablonec.
Yeah.
Because they knew then Rangers were often going to go around instead of through the middle, I think it became a bit predictable and a bit slow. And the goal actually comes from a similar situation to this one, but it's from a quick restart and Gassama can just get ahead of his man and there's a kind of man over and space out wide. But that was kind of an isolated incident in the first half of that build-up working.
If we look at another example where it didn't quite come to pass, you've got a similar situation here. Manny Fernandez starting off with the ball. I actually think that Fernandez, I agree with you, he had an all right game last night. He's not been playing well, but I think that he actually is taking on a bit of responsibility by taking the ball in those positions and wanting to do something with it and not just giving it to a blue shirt as soon as he sees one. He actually does want to try and look for that pass. So I think you have to give him a little bit of credit for that. But this is the screen grab here, 23-25.
Yeah.
Another example where Rangers can't quite find the breakthrough.
Yeah, so we'll look at a couple of examples where Fernandez does play a good pass. But again, I thought for what we've just shown, maybe what Rangers wanted to do, build and play, getting the ball to a winger quickly, moving it side to side, not necessarily wanting to build through the middle of the pitch because they want to keep their midfielders and their strikers high. They don't want to risk losing it there and they want to get forward quickly. The obvious downsides to that we'll come on to. If you look at Fernandez here, I think structurally Rangers were set up, although they've got two midfielders here, I think they're still set up to go around quite a lot. If you look at where Penrice and Gassama are, they're stretching the game on the far side of the pitch. But Jablonec knew too often that, okay, Rangers are going to go around. And I think they're set up for that. The ball goes to Dujon Sterling here. And this is where the kind of side-to-sideness suits Jablonec much more than Rangers because they can now press up, limit the options, use a touchline as an extra defender. So now when Yokota gets the ball, he gets the ball with a man at his back. There's such a big difference. If you're a fullback and I'm a winger, such a big difference, isn't there? If you're pushing me that way when I get the ball, or I'm pushing you that way when I get the ball. So Yokota then has to go back. And it's okay, maybe he's moving it from side to side. You can see Dan Neil in the next frame is pointing to McCann. You see, if you just look at Yokota's arm and Dragijevic's arm as the ball's going into McCann, they're saying to him, step in, be brave.
Yeah.
Rangers did more of that with McCann and Fernandez as the game wore on. But too often, they didn't go through the middle enough. And the reason you need to go through the middle is not only is there more opportunities, but it keeps your kind of threat of going out wide a little bit more unpredictable. But then when they did have the chance to go through the middle, it still got into the habit of lack of tempo, going out wide. So I think it was a bit one-dimensional in the first half. But also, as McInnes said, he kind of needed players to take a bit more ownership and responsibility of it.
Yeah, I thought that was a really interesting quote from Derek McInnes after the game last night when he said essentially, look, you can't hold players' hands through the 90 minutes. And that's been a major problem at Rangers for a long time now, where players look as though they need to be told where they should be all the time, and no one really steps up and takes that responsibility.
Yep.
And that, especially when it's not going particularly well and when it's not working at Ibrox, you need players to show a bit of character. You need players to, because sometimes that isn't even in the hands of a coach. That's something that is a bit intangible, to go, look, you need to go and make something happen here. You need to make the difficult choice. You need to play the difficult pass. You need to make the difficult run, because that's the thing that's going to open the game up for you.
Yeah.
And all right, sometimes you can make the easy run and it's safe and nothing happens, but you've maybe not made a mistake. But you're going to have to risk making a mistake to potentially make something good happen. And that's been a problem for me for a long time. And I'd like to see that more from this team. And I take it from these examples, you posit the theory that although you're going through the middle, it is a bit riskier, the rewards are much higher.
Yeah, so here's a good example. 13-10, Chukwuani's on the ball. Look at Dan Neil and Gassama. That's the type of ball, if you play it through the centre, it just opens things up, because naturally what happens when you play the ball through the centre is the wide areas open up, because the opposition team knows, okay, the goal's in the middle, so I got to protect that first, and then maybe that gives that winger a little bit of momentum to get the ball.
It's that level of analysis we're here for, Josh. Goals in the middle.
It's simple, isn't it? It's simple. It is simple.
There's a reason they take it to the corner when they're trying to protect the lead.
Yeah,
yes.
It is simple. It just takes you 35 minutes to make the simple point. The ball then goes across to Manny Fernandez. This pass is a pass that I don't think anyone else in the Rangers team can play. He wraps it right through the middle of the pitch, into the feet of Ryan Nadiri. If we skip on, Nadiri lays it off well here. Ball goes into Dan Neil, and suddenly, look at the difference. Jablonec, you're on the back foot. You've got two men on the left-hand side. James Penrice is out wide. I think this is the example where Penrice actually gets his shot away, but Rangers go through the middle of the pitch. And as we'll come on to look at, there is risks when you do that, especially if Neil's kind of the isolated lone number 6. But when you break up the kind of flow of side to side, it then simultaneously gives you more options out wide. So I don't think you're going to see a Rangers team this season who've got, like, I don't know, Dragicevic. Although Dragicevic did drop in next to Raskin against St Mirren at the weekend, and that's where the goal comes from, right? The St Mirren goal. So think of that as a risk, because he makes a mistake there.
Yeah.
The fullbacks are wide, because instead of bringing the fullbacks in narrow to maybe control the space, they're wide to try and stretch the play, to allow the wingers to stay wide to stretch the game. So then there's risk associated with that type of build-up, and also you need to do an element of it to create the space out wide.
Yeah. Can I just say, I prefer Dragicevic going forward. I don't want to see Dragicevic dropping back. From what I've seen so far.
Really?
Because I don't want a Rangers midfielder who actually likes shooting to be dulled by having to get back and put tackles in.
I think he's got to do both, though.
I agree.
Because you've got to get the ball forward.
That's and I'm modern midfielder. I don't want to see him thinking too much about running behind him. I want to see him try and progress the ball forward, because I think he's the best striker of the ball at the club, next to Telo Asgard.
Yeah. But then again, if you look at the St Mirren game, although the Rangers concede a goal from that, their fourth goal of the game comes from that same moment where Dragicevic drops in. And it's not the cleanest moment of build-up, but how would you get the ball forward?
I guess what I'm saying is I don't want Dragicevic doing what I would deem the Dan Neil role of going splitting the centre halves and picking the ball up. I want him further forward than that. I want him to be the guy who the ball progresses onto after that. Because hesitant as I am to make a Celtic example here, right? But I'm going to. But you watch Celtic the other night in the Champions League. Callum McGregor pulls back between the centre halves, picks the ball up on the half turn. Where's it going? He spins and he progresses the ball. That's what Rangers need.
But where are their fullbacks in that situation? Because Celtic's fullbacks have traditionally played more as midfielders, so that allows number 8s to go high. Whereas if you look at even the St Mirren example, if you've not got the fullbacks coming narrow in build up when you're trying to build play, again, last night's first half is such a good example of, like, you can't just make the game fast if it's an end-to-end game and the space is a prerequisite, it's a different conversation. But when space isn't a prerequisite, you've got to think, how are we going to control, probe, open up, get our best players into the best positions? And against St Mirren, what Dragicevic did not well in the first half, but kept trying to do, was that little bounce pass gave you a route forward. So I think, similarly with the conversation about wingers, before we think about what a Rangers going to look like in the final third, you've got to think about how are they going to get there. And St Mirren was a good example of just trying some things around that. And last night, as we'll come on to look at in the second half, when they did play into Neil Moore.
Yeah. Well, let's go on to that just now, because this is the kind of point I'm making.
Yeah.
That I want Dan Neil to be that figure, to be, okay, you can progress the ball forward from back to front, and then open that up for the forward players, of which I regard Dragicevic as one. Maybe in my head, I'm putting him as one of an attacker.
Yeah.
So I think that Dan Neil has been copping a lot of heat online over the past 24 hours. He didn't play well in the first half. I think that's fair, totally fine. He was a bit of a passenger, but he comes out in the second half and he does, for me, start to give Rangers that option in the middle of the park.
Yeah.
He, for the goal, he goes into the golf bag and gets the pitch and wedge out and plays that lovely little pass to Daisuke Yokota.
You've prepared that.
Yeah, I have. It's great. May have said it on national radio yesterday morning as well. But that's what he does, and that's what he's there for me.
Yeah.
He has to be that player that's coming in, splitting the centre halves, turning and going, all right, how can I progress the ball forward?
Yeah.
I don't want Dan Neil playing backwards passes. I want him going in the opposite
Sometimes
direction.
he needs to play backwards passes.
But I want him to be looking progressively.
Well, here's an example of looking progressively, right? 58, 53.
Yeah.
He gets the ball from Fernandes, and Rangers didn't do that this much in the first half. They do it in the second half. As he plays back to McCann, that is a wise back pass, because then McCann...
I'm not saying he can never play back, right? He's never allowed to play back, but you take my point.
I take your point.
Yeah.
But he's shifting play, moving it, and trying to... what we said when he arrived, I think a number 6's job, sometimes it's to play forwards really progressively, sometimes it's just to create the space for others to create a platform. So McCann gets the ball here, he plays back into Dan Neil, then plays out to James Penrice. Now, James Penrice doesn't actually make this pass, but look how much more favourable the conditions are to go forward which he should make that pass into Dan Neil. Suddenly, you can make the game fast because you're playing into space. We go back again to the first image with Fernandes on the ball. How do you go forward there? Because Jablonec are set up to defend, they're facing forward. If you can contrast that to the frame where Penrice should find Dan Neil, there is space to go forward so you can play fast. If we move on, one more example, and this ties into your Dragicevic point, right? Here's another similar example here again. McCann and Fernandes trying to beat the press. McCann plays it into Ryan Adiri, who drops in. Dan Neil is kind of a little bit deep, but the ball from Adiri is maybe a bit rusty. Now, 64-46 here, Dan Neil gets booked for this tackle. I think it was a bit harsh. This is the risk of central progression, because look where your two number 8s are. Dragicevic is high. So the reason sometimes I'd like to see him a little bit lower is because if you lose the ball there, look how open the centre of the pitch is.
Can I counterpoint that briefly? I don't think that happens if you've got a player more effective than Tochi Chukwueze in there.
Why?
Because I don't think that Tochi Chukwueze offered enough going forward to warrant him being in that position.
But I think the only, the rotation in the team was that Chukwueze at the number 8s, especially on the left, would run beyond and would create a lot of... So, for example, the chance he does create on the night, I don't get a great game. The chance he does create on the night, when he puts across the face of goal for Nadiri, I think he was getting himself in a lot of those positions. Not a great end product, but he's having to stretch the game a lot. It reminded me a bit of Diamande under Clement, making those kind of long stretching runs from a number 8 position. I don't think in this situation it's Chukwueze's fault. I agree with you maybe overall, but I think if you get the ball into... It's the chicken and egg, it's the risk of a manager system versus the reward. If you look at Sterling and Dragicevic in this 64-44 frame, I think that's how McInnes wants to attack. So they've really got a 3v2 out wide, big spaces, stretching the team. But the risk is if you lose that individual battle, we've spoken about man-to-man battles all summer, as Nadiri, Dan Neil kind of do, then neither Sterling or Dragicevic are necessarily in a position to protect the centre of the pitch. Now, you've still got two centre halves, but we've seen too often this season Rangers centre halves being exposed to men running at them. So I think that's the balance with Dragicevic's positioning. Sometimes we've been really good forward positions, but also do you want a little bit more cover in there? And more generally with playing the ball through the centre, you saw the benefits of it, you saw the risks. and sometimes it's maybe just about doing it or threatening it a little bit more. So you create the space out wide to allow Rangers to then progress the ball, get up the pitch. And as we'll maybe just close on, I think the way that McInnes will want his team to inject like pace and tempo into games, into these type of games. Yes, it will be playing things quicker. Yes, it will be opening up the centre of the pitch a bit more. I think primarily it's going to be ball carriers who get the ball in a bit of space and can then take you forward, create threat, get bums off seats, all that type of stuff. And that's why he's been so insistent, continuously talking about getting threat and quality out wide, and understandably so.
It's obviously no secret that Rangers are trying to add quality in that position of the park.
Yep.
They have been linked with a winger almost per day at this stage
Yep.
for not insignificant amounts of money. Serious transfer fees being thrown about. So it's clear that the club see this as a crucial position that has to be improved before the window closes. Before I come on and ask you essentially why wingers are going to be so important for Derek McInnes and why the club feel as though they need to bring someone like that in, I want to put to you this theory that I spoke to you about last night in the game, that I think that Rangers fullbacks are going to be almost just as important as Rangers wingers in this system, because you've seen what the difference that Jedi Gassama looks like playing with James Penrice behind him.
Yeah.
Because James Penrice has given him underlapping runs, he's given him overlapping runs, he's given him the confidence that he can go forward on himself. But also with James Penrice's tenacity, he's making a bit of space for Jedi Gassama on that side. And I think that's where you're maybe going to get your space in this system if you have that sort of symbiotic relationship between fullback and winger, where the wingers are able to be smart enough and also athletic enough to basically act like second wingers in essence. So you can overload on those sides, but you can also speak about these gaps that you're talking about. If they can create that on the wings, that's where I think Derek McInnes wants a lot of his joy to come from.
Yeah, and to go back, if we're thinking of that example there of where Dragicevic and Sterling are, McInnes clearly wants his fullbacks wide to be fullbacks, to be up and down, and I think Nedeljkovic very much fits that. Powerful runner, actually a really big guy. There was an interview with him coming out at Saturday at 12, and when he walked into the press room, he thought, "Oh, he's bigger than I thought he would be." Yeah.
He can shift as well, by the way. He got on his bike for that ball last night, and I was like, this boy can move.
Well, piece I wrote about him this week, and I put in a stat that someone told me about, that he hit 36 kilometers per hour in the Serbian second tier when he was 17. So he's very quick.
Yeah,
very, very quick. I can't even hit that pace. The Voy bikes in Glasgow don't go that fast. What was the question?
Yes, fullbacks and wingers are going to be very important.
Yeah. And then it's how do you create the space for them?
Yeah.
So I agree with you that Gassama looks so much more natural when he starts out wide, starts by a touchline, and has got Penrice who can run inside or outside. And if you can replicate that threat a bit more on the right, I thought Sterling got up and down pretty well yesterday. I think he actually put in quite a few good crosses on Thursday night as well.
It's not his game though. It's not. I'll give you that he did the job, but you can't convince me that Dujon is an attacking player.
He came through as a right wing back. So I think a lot of Sterling's he's had to stay back a lot so far this season. So again, if you've then got both fullbacks going forward in a 4-3-3, you probably need one of your other midfielders to stay deep next to the number 6, which is what Sterling's done to enable Dragicevic to go high on the other side.
See, when you've got a game where you need to keep it a bit more solid and you want more defenders to defend, Sterling is your option, 100%. Yeah. I absolutely agree with that. But when I think you need a little bit more pace, a little bit more balls into the box and maybe more driving towards a goal, I think that's why you've got Nedeljkovic in there.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think more generally on your point, wingers are going to be important for what they do in the final third, good decision making, good end product, good final ball. But they'll also be crucial for making games like this fast. If Rangers can be a little bit more varied in how they play, if they can move it quicker, I also think that instead of managers want to inject pace in different ways. So to use like a current Premier League example, because it's starting this weekend, De Zerbi's, I think his teams, they inject pace by playing in these dangerous areas with two holding midfielders, and then you create space that way. some managers want to go slow and progress the ball gradually up the pitch and then get the ball to wingers and inject pace that way. I think for McInnes, he wants a really threatening ball carry on either side. Yes, so that they can be dangerous when Rangers get to the final third, but also to help them get to the final third as well.
Yeah, and they've got a bit of that in Gassama and Yokota. Yokota, I think, has looked bright so far since he's came in. But the reason why they're wanting to spend big on a position like that is because, as we've said before, wingers are inherently individualistic and they need to come up with little moments of magic and go past men and commit men and come up with basically bits of skill that can open games
individualism.
Up.
Yeah, individualism, which is going to be important this season.
And I'm not saying it's a foolproof method, but generally the more you spend, the better you get, really. So that's why Rangers are really looking at these wingers for the amounts of money that they're looking at.
Yeah, agreed. Nothing to add on that.
Could be the first time you ever fully agreed with a point of mine.
No, I agree with you all the time.
Good. That's hopefully we've tried to
let people enjoy the rest of their Saturdays.
Yes, absolutely. We've tried to unpick a little bit of what Rangers have been doing this week, what Derek McInnes has been doing from a tactical point of view, and what we expect for the rest of the transfer window. No game, of course, this weekend, so you can enjoy the Saturday show at any point without it going out of date before Rangers come along. The next game will be
Thursday.
Over Jablonec. You will be going.
Czechia.
Yes,
I'm going.
You'll be there.
Looking forward to
enjoying a few Czech lagers.
I'm not drinking at the moment because I'm trying to hit. I know.
You can't go to Czech Republic and not have a few beers.
Well, regular viewers to the channel will know I'm about to try and tackle my first marathon, and it's hard. So
breaking news: doing a marathon is quite difficult.
It's quite difficult. So we'll see. Maybe I'll have one or two. But
I'm sure a few of our journalist colleagues won't let you off the hook that easy. You'll be in some sort of bar. Yeah. So Josh will, of course, be keeping you updated with that game all through the week, all the build-up, as Rangers look to progress to the Conference League, and then it is Aberdeen away.
Which we're going to.
Which we are going to, yes.
We could travel next week.
On your travels all over the place. But that will do us today for this Saturday show. Thanks very much again to our sponsor, Lime Energy, Fresh Thinking Energy, for bringing you this show every week. The best tactical breakdown of everything that Rangers do. I've been your host for today, Blue Malloy. That has been your co-host. Yes, I'm co-host.
Co-host,
Joshua Barry. For everyone watching on YouTube, thanks a lot for watching and thanks a lot for listening.